Hi, welcome to the Sweet Sugar Bakers YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me today. I recently tested out 3 different sugar cookie recipes and I want to share the results with you. I'm going to show you the step-by-step instructions for making each of these 3 recipes, and I'm also going to share with you the results of how all 3 recipes turned out and which ones I think are great and one which I didn't like as much. And then at the end, I will let you know my results. The 3 different sugar cookie recipes that I made are number 1, the Sweet Sugar Bakers sugar cookie recipe, which I developed. Number 2, the best sugar cookie recipe, which is from inkatrinaskitchen.com. And number 3 is a sugar cookie recipe that uses sour cream in the recipe. I made this new recipe of sugar cookies using sour cream, and I'm going to share the recipe with you. This is what the finished cookies look like. I will definitely not be making this cookie recipe again, just simply due to the fact that they don't hold their shape very well. They're all kind of misshapen. They also come out really thick, which is interesting. So I'm going to do a taste test between this recipe and another sugar cookie recipe that I tried, as well as my sugar cookie recipe, and I'll let you know which one I like the best. So the ingredients for this sugar cookie recipe that has the sour cream are 1 cup of butter, 1 cup sugar, 1 cup sour cream, 3 egg yolks, 1 teaspoon vanilla, 3 cups flour, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon baking powder, half a teaspoon baking soda. And I also added a teaspoon of almond extract as well, just because I like almond and vanilla in my sugar cookies. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to whisk together your dry ingredients, which is the flour, salt, baking powder, and baking soda. And you want to whisk those together really well in a separate bowl so that they are well combined before you add them in later. Then you're going to use your stand mixer and you're going to cream the butter, which should be room temperature. I usually just soften it a little bit in my microwave if I don't leave it out in advance, which I never remember to. So you're going to cream your butter and sugar together in the stand mixer until they are well combined. And next step, you're going to add in your egg yolks and the extracts. So you're going to add in your vanilla extract, and if you wanted to also have almond extract, you can add those in as well. And you're going to add in the sour cream as well. And you're going to mix it really well with your stand mixer until those are well combined. And at this point, you will add in your dry ingredients, and then you're going to mix those up until your dough comes together. I ended up having to add a whole extra cup of flour to this recipe because my dough was still too sticky. Ideally, you want to have enough flour that your dough is pulling itself away from the sides of the bowl, and that way you know that it's ready. And I had to add an extra cup of flour in order to get to that texture for this particular recipe. Once your dough is at that consistency where it's not too sticky and it's sticking to itself, this recipe calls for chilling the dough. So I took the dough out and put it in some plastic wrap and then made it a nice flat shape so that it would be ready for rolling it out after it was chilled. I wrapped it thoroughly in the plastic wrap to keep it protected in the refrigerator so it wouldn't dry out. And then after it had a chance to chill, I would say I chilled it for about an hour or so. Then you will take it out of the refrigerator and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. At this point, I rolled my cookie dough out to 1/4 inch thick using my rolling pin, and I roll it in between 2 Amazon Basics silicone mats. You can also roll in between 2 pieces of parchment paper so that the dough doesn't stick, and you don't really need any flour for rolling it out this way. Then you're going to cut out your shapes and place them on a cookie sheet that is lined with parchment paper, and that keeps the cookies from sticking to the cookie sheet, and you don't have to spray the pan or anything like that. The parchment paper works great, and you can even reuse it several times to keep baking more cookies on the same sheet of parchment paper. These are some really puffy cookies. You bake these cookies for 10 to 12 minutes at 375, and they really puff up a lot and get pretty thick. And I also felt like they got pretty misshapen and just looked kind of funny. Okay, so let me try this sour cream sugar cookie and see what it tastes like. I mean, it tastes kind of like a biscuit. It looks kind of like a biscuit, thick, and it tastes kind of like a biscuit. It's not sweet. I mean, not very sweet at all. And it just has kind of like a soft, biscuity kind of flavor and texture. I'm not impressed. Definitely won't be making these again. I mean, it's not like they taste bad. They taste good. They'll probably be good if they have icing on them. But the fact that they end up looking so weird and not keeping their shape means that I can't use them to make sugar cookies. And they're just way too thick anyway. It's not realistic. But they won't go to waste. They don't taste bad. I can still decorate them and use them. Definitely won't be changing my sugar cookie recipe to replace with these though. So that's my verdict. So that's it for the sour cream cookies. Moving on. I'm going to be sharing another recipe with you. This one, which is called the best sugar cookie recipe. So I was curious to try it, and here is the finished cookie. These turned out beautiful. They look like perfection. They kept their shape really well. They look lovely. The dough didn't require any chilling. So I'm very curious to compare them to my recipe and see what I think. I'll let you know. I got this recipe from inkatrinaskitchen.com, and it calls for 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, half a teaspoon of almond extract, 1 egg, 2 teaspoons baking powder, half a teaspoon salt, and 3 cups of flour. Again, you're going to whisk together your dry ingredients in a separate bowl to begin with, which is your flour, baking powder, and salt. Thoroughly get those combined before adding in. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. You're going to start off in the bowl of your stand mixer. You're going to cream together the butter and sugar until smooth, at least 3 minutes. Then you're going to add in your egg and the extracts and combine those until well mixed. Finally, you're going to add in your pre-mixed dry ingredients and mix it all up until the dough is well mixed and pulling away from the sides of the mixer. At this point, you do not chill this dough, so you just pat it together into a nice ball and get it ready for rolling out. I again used my rolling pin that rolls the dough out to 1/4 inch thick, and I rolled in between my 2 silicone baking mats, or you could use 2 pieces of parchment, and just roll the dough out in batches, and then use your cookie cutters to cut out your desired shapes. Gently remove the cookie dough from your silicone mat and place it on a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. Bake at 350 degrees for 6 to 8 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to taste it and see what it tastes like. Okay, so it tastes good. I can definitely taste butter and salt and sugar. I wouldn't say that I love the flavor. The texture is wonderful. It's nice and soft and chewy. I feel like it's a nice base, that you could decorate. I just feel like it maybe doesn't have the best flavor. All right, so I have to try one of mine and compare. Okay, here is one of my sugar cookies from the Sweet Sugar Baker's recipe, which I developed myself. I'm going to taste it now as a direct comparison to the recipe that I just tried called the Best Sugar Cookie Recipe. Let's see. Okay, mine tastes better. Mine have a much lighter, less salty taste. They have more of the vanilla and almond flavor and just a lightly sweet instead of the other cookies are almost verging on savory flavor, and these are sweeter. Both of them are still pretty mild to let the icing, take over so it's not overly sweet. I will say that I like the texture of the other cookies a lot. My texture of my cookies is great too, but the other ones are slightly chewier. Mine are still soft. They just don't have quite as much of the chewy bite that the other ones do. I'm still going to stick with my recipe though. I like the flavor of my cookies the best. But I will say, I do like this other sugar cookie recipe a lot for the chewy texture. I might try altering this recipe to increase the amount of vanilla and almond extracts that are in it to give it a little bit more of the flavor that I like. So we'll see. I might be back with a modified version. So that's it for In Katrina's Kitchen. Now moving on to my sugar cookie recipe. This one that I'm about to show you is my Sweet Sugar Baker sugar cookie recipe. And it always turns out great. I always really enjoy it. But I had seen some other recipes recommended on some Facebook groups that I'm on, and so I wanted to try some other recipes out. I always like to test other recipes just to make sure that I'm using what I think is the best one. And so I did a comparison, and I'll let you know the results. I developed this recipe myself. This is the Sweet Sugar Baker's sugar cookie recipe. You need 1 cup of butter, room temperature, 1 3/4 cups powdered sugar, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon and 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of almond extract, 3½ cups of flour, 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Whisk together your dry ingredients to start. Set your oven to 375 degrees, and you're going to start by mixing up the butter, just the butter, in the stand mixer. You're going to cream it until it is light and fluffy. Then you will add in your powdered sugar and cream together the powdered sugar with your butter until those are fully combined, scraping down the bowl as necessary. You will then add in your eggs plus your extracts and mix until thoroughly combined. Finally, add your dry ingredients into the butter mixture. You're going to mix the dough until it's combined. The dough should be very thick and pulling away from the sides of the bowl when it's ready. If your dough is still really sticky and not pulling away from the sides of the bowl, you can add a small amount of flour at a time until it gets to that right consistency. Then you're going to pack your dough together with your hands to form discs. No need to refrigerate or chill the dough. Go ahead and roll it out between 2 pieces of parchment paper or 2 silicone mats to 1/4 inch thickness. Then cut your dough out into your desired shapes, transfer it to parchment-lined baking sheets, and bake for 6 to 7 minutes until just slightly starting to turn a little bit brown at the edges, but still not very brown at all because you don't want to overbake it. So this is my finished cookies. They always turn out great. I'm always really happy with them. Everybody likes them. They taste wonderful. I will say that after testing between mine and the Best Sugar Cookie Recipe, they're very similar. I would say that there's just a slight difference in texture. The ones from the Best Sugar Cookie Recipe are just a little bit chewier and a little bit more savory tasting, whereas mine are a little bit sweeter and have more of the vanilla and almond flavoring. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to work on tweaking the recipes a little bit more. And I might come up with a new Sweet Sugar Baker recipe based on this comparison. I'm still really happy with the original recipe, but maybe we'll have a new one in development soon. So my conclusion is that, first of all, I was not impressed with the sugar cookies that used sour cream in the recipe. They did not hold their shape. They were very thick, and I didn't really think they tasted all that great. So that recipe is going in the trash for me. I did really like my recipe still, of course. Since I developed it, I still like it. And I also really liked the In Katrina's Kitchen Best Sugar Cookie recipe. So what I might do is try to revamp my recipe a little bit to be maybe combined with the In Katrina's Kitchen recipe, because I did like some elements of that recipe and I liked some elements of my recipe, and I will let you know if I update my recipe. But for now, I would say it's safe to say you could use either my recipe or the recipe from In Katrina's Kitchen. They're both winners. Thank you for watching.